Trump's cabinet picks panned in Washington thrill many of his voters. To his detractors, President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet looks like a rogues gallery of people with dubious credentials and questionable judgment. His supporters see something different. It's a masterpiece. Aileen Margolis, 58, who lives in Western Florida and owns a tattoo business, said of Trump's cabinet picks unveiled over the past week. If it was a painting, it would be a Picasso, she said. A brilliant alliance is how Joanne Warwick, 60, a former Democrat from Detroit, describes many of the nominees. It's pretty much a star cast, said Judy Canoy of Flat Rock, North Carolina, a retiree longtime Democrat who voted for Mr. Trump for the first time this month. Democrats and even Republicans worry that these nominees for top positions in government are inexperienced, conflicted, and potentially reckless. But in interviews with almost 24 Trump voters around the country, his supporters were more likely to describe them as mavericks and reformers recruited to deliver on Trump's promise to shake up Washington. In Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the nominee for Health and Human Services Secretary, Mr. Trump's supporters see a crusader searching for new solutions to chronic illnesses, not a conspiracy theorist promoting questionable ideas about vaccines and fluoride. In Matt Gaetz, a nominee for Attorney General, many Trump supporters look past the ethical investigation into allegations that he had relationships. The provocateur who's willing to punish the Democrats who unjustly prosecuted the president-elect. I think it's so crazy, I love it. Merrill McCollum, 60, of Bozeman, Montana, said of the nominees. Ms. McCollum said she voted for Trump after becoming frustrated by bureaucracy, identity politics, and the rising cost of living. She is excited about his appointments of people she sees as outsiders to Washington, D.C., a place she got to know while working there during tours in naval intelligence. And she said, what we've been doing in the past really has not worked. Not everyone is thrilled with every nominee. Some said that the choice of Matt Gaetz, polarizing figure in both parties, could prove an unsuccessful distraction and expresses doubts that he could be confirmed. Others thought the cabinet was not anti-establishment enough, pointing to Marco Rubio, the Florida senator, who was tapped as Secretary of State. Brian Kozlowski, 40-year-old lawyer in Orlando, said even after Trump's resounding victory, his own expectations were relatively low that his candidate would be able to bring about lasting changes in Washington, but the cabinet appointees have made him hopeful. He said it's an actual fulfillment of political dispensing with the norms. The number one thing to me is a lot of Trump voters is getting rid of the swamp, he said. This is what is shocking some people. It may actually happen. Among the nominees, most praised in the interview was Mr. Kennedy, who often speaks of addressing the rise in chronic health conditions. Many health experts are alarmed by Kennedy's unfounded claims that vaccines cause autism and by his threats to sue medical journals and fire hundreds of employees at the National Institute of Health. They fear that as Health Secretary, he could undo generations of sound public health policy. But voters who support Trump said they admire Kennedy's focus on environmental toxins and his break with his famous family over his unorthodox views. David Dollar, 71, home improvement contractor in Durham, North Carolina, said he appreciated Kennedy's push to examine how corporate agriculture and food manufacturing affects Americans' health. Ms. Warwick, former Democrat from Detroit, said, I bet there's a bunch of people shaking in their boots about Kennedy's election, but in the end, she said, Democrats might like some of his policies. Perhaps more than any other policy stance, Kennedy's criticisms of vaccines resonated with Trump supporters, many of whom said they were still angry about mandates and business and school shutdowns, and they blamed them on President Biden and not Trump, who was president then when the pandemic started. The more criticism the cabinet nominee elicit, Trump voters said the more proves that Washington is scared of change. Donna Hutz, 60, of Hubert, Ohio, said she has been happy about every appointment announced so far, particularly Matt Gaetz, a former Florida congressman who resigned last week after Trump announced his appointment. And she believes that the allegations against Gaetz are false, making her root for his success even more. The Justice Department under Biden declined to file charges in this case, and Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, said he objected to releasing reports on Ethics Committee's investigations. And it's not what he's done; it's what was done to him. Ms. Hood's portfolio manager at an information technology company said. They're losing it, and I'm enjoying every minute of it, Ms. Hood said of Trump's critics. Not all comments are unalloyed praise. Ron Riggs, 65, real estate broker in Torrance, California, said he thought Matt Gaetz' nomination was counterproductive, even though he could understand why Trump might want a loyalist in his position. Some worried that the cabinet would not work quickly enough to end the conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza. Cole Graham, 30 years old, took issue with the selections of Rubio and Pete Hegseth, a Fox News host who was tapped to run the Pentagon. Now, one supporter was pleased with the appointees, not just for partisan reasons. Mike Netter, 67, who lives in Los Angeles County and who, during the pandemic, helped lead a recall attempt against Governor Gavin Newsom, California, said he was drawn to the relative youth of nominees like Matt Gaetz and Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard, a former Democratic congresswoman and nominee for National Intelligence Director, who are all under the age of 50. The first thing Mr. Netter noticed when he looked at many of the nominees, he said, was no gray hair on any of them. This is from New York Times on DNYUZ. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.